What kind of router table is this, Jim?
This is a fixture I made for mortising. It has a router mounted horizontally, where the bit extends horizontally this way on the work surface. And it does mortise and tenon, mortise and spline. I like mortise and spline myself, but how it works is this is mounted on a plate, and the plate has 2 thumb screws. When you loosen those, you have vertical adjustment.
Okay.
For cutting 3/4 inch stock, you'd want to make that adjustment so that it was about halfway. Does that look close?
Yeah, it's close.
Like any other router, you also have...
Is that close enough?
If you're using mortise and spline, where instead of making a tenon, a spline is just going to fit in the mortise. It's close enough as long as you leave the face side on both pieces up or down. As long as they're both the same, it's close enough.
It'll automatically align.
Right.
All right.
It also has a dado slot in the tabletop that you can use a conventional miter slot.
All right. And is this thing a hold-down device, or?
This is a hold-down. It's an indicator. It actually does a few different things. It does hold the stock down,
All right.
so that the stock can't rise. It also works as a guard. It keeps your fingers away from the bit. It has two scribe lines on the guard. The second scribe line I would actually use to start my cut. That would line up with the first mark. Then I would pass so that the second mark aligned with the first indicator. Then
All
I
right.
would come out.
All right.
So it sets my beginning and my ending point for the mortise. That's basically how it works.
I can see the advantage when you go to cut a mortise of having the stock lay flat on a table, because you can keep it pressed and register it well. And you're not fighting gravity when you have to lift it back up off the cutter.
That's right.
Mortises are such a time-honored joint. I think so many amateurs stay away from them because of the difficulty of getting proper registration, but it looks like you've got that beat.
This makes it real easy. And by using the spline, it gives you the strength of a tenon, but it's a lot easier, it's faster, and it still gives you all the glue surface on each side, both in the mortise and sticking out. It's going to give you all that glue surface.
When cutting, Jim feeds the work always away from himself. In this way, the cutting stroke of the bit presses the stock firmly against the table. Jim plants the stock against the fence and then pivots it into the bit. Because this pivoting entry can result in unevenness at the top edge of the mortise, Jim will backfeed the stock slightly at the last pass in order to straighten out this top edge.
Here's a nearly perfect mortise, John.
Sidewalls are smooth too.
Yeah, and the radius ends on a problem because I've gone ahead and radiused both sides of this pre-made spline to fit the same radius. To make those splines, I simply plane the lumber down to 1/4 inch thick, round it over both edges, and then I cut them off to length. And for length, if I have a 1 inch deep mortise on both sides, I'll go ahead and cut this about an eighth inch shy of that to give room for the glue and to make sure I don't have any interference in the depth.
Well, how are you going to cut the mortise on the end of this piece?
That I'll use the miter gauge in here, and I'll make 2 plunge cuts and then several little passes back and forth. Let me show you how I do that.
All right. You aren't going to retract the bit? You're going to leave it full length?
Full length.
By drilling 2 full-depth holes at both ends of the stock, Jim guarantees that they are straight and smooth. Then all he must do is hog out the waste in between them. So you left the bit extended full length, but you only plunged it a little bit at a time.
That's right.
You never took a full pass, well, you did, until the very end.
Right. I plunge to full depth on each side. That helps me feel my limits. And then I'll make the same increments, but this time instead of adjusting the depth of the bit, I'll use this in my hands to keep pressure against the miter gauge.
Right.
So I can hold this, make a pass, bring it back, hold it a little bit further, make a pass, and just make my depth that way. It's a lot easier than trying to set the router each time. And that way I know that the router bit is set to the same depth as it was for making the other mortise because I didn't change it.
And both faces are the same.
Right.
Well, what kind of fit have we got?
How does that feel, John?
Well, it slips right in.
Try this piece.
Oh, that's terrific. The surface is even flush.
Look at that, huh?
Yeah.
Nice strong joint.
And it couldn't have been easier.
It really couldn't have.
Wasn't even a dusty operation.